Well, Kyle, what a bizarre weekend of Formula One. We had track changes mid-weekend, we had an added session, we had tyres literally destroying themselves from the inside out, we had a driver in the qualifying podium photos despite qualifying 6th, we had a mandatory 3-stop minimum race, we had the ever-prevalent track limits, we had drivers passing out from heat exhaustion post-race. We had drivers throwing up in helmets. We had drivers passing out in the high-speed corners. We had a driver retiring because he was too ill. But amidst all this, we also had an Australian's first win in Formula One and a Red Bull third championship. So, what the hell was this weekend? I don't know what to make of it. There's so much.
I mean, we went into it going, hey, let's not write it off. Let's see what happens. I mean, I don't know if this is one like, some other circuits where we now go, I can't wait to go back. I think everyone's going, well, that's our first of 9 years here. Let's start figuring out what the hell we're going to do for next year. Because
here for so long.
Whatever
happened to that purpose-made circuit they were supposed to be building instead of coming here? This is supposed to be a stopgap, and then we're supposed to be going somewhere else.
I don't even remember what that was, but it's strange, right? Because I think it's not like we knew there was a ton of potential issues coming in here, right? Like the only thing we really knew was that last time out we had the tire issues. Now there have been other circuits in the past that have had tire issues too. And then they change things around, they sort things out, and you don't see it again, right? Yeah. So coming in this year, there was all faith to go, hey, they would have learned from it. They said they made curb changes. They said they redid the surface. All of that jazz, which you went, sure, there's no reason to come here to think that any of these 10 things are going to be a problem. I mean, touching on one of those, which I think was the most amazing, it wasn't even apparent that the heat was an issue until after the race, where all the drivers suddenly got out and they said to the media, what the hell, that was really hard. And everyone went, was it? And it was like one or two of them might be saying it, and Sargent felt unwell, but you went, oh, are they just a bit unwell? And then you realize, well, actually, that was, horrible for them. But it wasn't one going into it like Singapore. Everything about Singapore, we say it's hot, it's humid, it's hard. You didn't get that coming in here, and yet I guess just with how it all played out, with everyone pushing so hard, that came up as well as everything else. So it's one where on review you go, what? Like, how did everyone miss the mark on all this? And then what the hell do we do for the future coming back here, right? Because it's... Yeah. Wow, okay.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts. Like, I think even Alonso made some comments about the fact that even in the previous sessions leading up to that race, he said it honestly didn't feel all that bad. I think he seems to think that... I think it was mentioned as well that the wind had died down for that Sunday, which I think is quite important. It was quite windy for Friday and Saturday. It was a big talking point. It's why a lot of drivers were having corrections and going over the track limits and things.
Those first laps out in practice was no one knew what the hell they were doing. Not just because of that surface, but the wind, especially through that T4-5 complex. Every driver went off several times there before the weekend had even begun. Yeah. So it was a big factor.
Yeah, so and I think that the lack of the wind for sure was a big contributing factor to the heat for that race. But yeah, as you say, it was you didn't realize just how bad it was until after the race. Like even you saw the cool down room with Max and the two McLaren drivers, and you saw how you thought, oh yeah, they're pretty worn out. It's big physical race, and then you get some of the stories after the fact, and you're just like, oh, someone could have died in this race. It's pretty scary, but I guess let's kind of talk about that. Seeing as we're already on this, let's kind of dive into that before we go into all the other stuff. I think it's a big enough topic that I think...
I mean, it's a big topic. I think there's a lot of maybe negatives to start with. I do want to maybe just touch on something positive.
Yeah.
For as boring a track as we thought this might be, I actually thought we had some killer racing out there. It was a little bit of DRS passing into turn 1, but there was a lot of, I think, what we saw from Miami, where last year Miami was a circuit which seemed pretty bland, and yet this year people seem to actually find a way they could race through several corners. So there was actually some amazing battles here. It was part helped by the fact that, as we'll go into, there was this enforced strategy, and that meant that the undercut, overcut was so vastly different that you had people overtaking, but it wasn't just like you passed down the straight, that's it. There was side by side, there was drivers all over the place. And I think just the fact that it was intense, you know, both mentally and physically for all those drivers end to end is why, as we're going to get into, extra on top of it, they're all just having to be so on their game the entire race, driving the hell out of their cars because they were able to push them, and that just physically exhausted them. But I mean, you've I can imagine you've done the research. You know some stories we got back.
Yeah, well, there was someone made a compilation of a lot of the people's like comments or various things on Reddit about what drivers were saying after the race. Russell said the conditions were borderline too much and he thought he was going to faint. Bottas called the race torture and said the conditions were on the limit of acceptable. Tsunoda opened his visor, wanting to get crucial cold air. All he got was sand.
I think it was sand. Poor bastard.
Yeah. Ocon called it the toughest race of his life. He threw up in his helmet twice in the first 20 or 25 laps or something. He threw up in his helmet and had to and still managed to finish P7, by the way. Fucking unbelievable. Sargent, obviously, we've touched on. He retired from the race. He came over the radio saying he didn't feel well. He apparently...
It was too much for him,
Yeah, he apparently had flu-like symptoms sort of earlier in the week. It probably is...
If you weren't 100% heading into this, you weren't going to make it out.
I think
at the time, we thought, he's just having a bit of an off day. The team very quickly seemed to say, you know, they weren't like, can you try and push through it? They're like, that's totally fine. And we all went, a little odd, but I guess they're playing safe. But we quickly learned after, actually, totally admirable of him to do that, right? Because
we were also on board for his in-lap as well. He was obviously not well. Like, he was just, like, he was going, like, half the speed of normal racing and just missing the track and going off. And, like, I think he was borderline about to pass out, and that's probably the only reason he came in.
He obviously gave it his all. We can give him credit where they even said, "You want to come in?" He's like, no, we'll try. And obviously he got to that breaking point where the adrenaline just dropped off and he had nothing physically to give. So
definitely.
You got to give him credit for that, at least. He tried.
And his teammate Albon, we saw, if you've seen any of the post like race sort of stuff, Albon couldn't get out of the car on his own due to exhaustion. He was taken to the medical center and was actually treated for acute heat exposure. So like he had to get treated. I think a couple of others.
There was one other driver in particular that went into, I don't know if it was Stroll or someone else, but there was another driver that also got taken with Albon to the,
I think
less of the general medical center and more of the checking for something more serious.
Norris was saying that apparently multiple drivers passed out in the medical center, so that was good. Stroll was saying that the last sort of 30 laps or so was incredibly blurry. That probably contributes to his track limits, where he's like, I couldn't see the lines because they were just so blurry. He was saying he would like pass out in the high speed corners. He'd like dip in and out of consciousness.
There's some footage of him you can see in certain areas. It looks like he's like, again, this also goes to show that looking at it, you didn't notice that anything was wrong. It looked like everyone was there fighting. Obviously, of course, we forget that they're so fine-tuned to drive autonomously that even though they're on the verge of passing out, they can still do the actions. But mentally and physically, everything else in their body's obviously just detaching from reality to save as much energy as possible to do the physical bit. So the fact that, sure, we had, you know, some corner cuts and that, but nothing excessive that, you know, go, oh my god, that guy's obviously needs to get out of the car, there's something horrible wrong here. You just assume that, you know, it was just tough, but there wasn't any of these issues until every single driver came out to say, oh my god, that was horrible. You know? And even people like Hamilton, which was like, he almost feels lucky that he wasn't there because that seemed horrible. And, giving credit to everyone for sticking through it who did make it to the end.
It's pretty unbelievable. I think the FIA have... FIA or F1, those groups, they've pretty quickly come out and said they're immediately looking into that. Like, I think at their next meeting, they're going to discuss it. They say it probably will help having Qatar slightly later. They're having it November next year.
Yeah, it's
so
a later race, which
hopefully
they say should be cooler in general.
But they say even that, like, they're going to be looking further than that to obviously make sure this sort of doesn't happen again. Because when it's just one or two drivers, you're like, yeah, okay, maybe they, it's
had an
other
off day
circumstance,
just,
off day,
yeah,
like you
yeah.
say, could have been sick beforehand and just came on, whatever. When it's like almost the entire field basically saying, yeah, this is borderline like unraceable, then it's just like, yeah, maybe we need to make some changes, especially like you say, if we're going to be coming here until when are we here till 2030,
2032, I guess
325 or something. Yeah. I mean,
well, it's good to see this kind of response. I mean, we would anyway, because look, this isn't the 80s anymore when you have, blazing hot races in the American sun and people are passing out, but it's just part of the sport. It's the same as why we don't race in torrential rain anymore, and we're so careful of it. This is the flip side of being careful now in that torrential rain. This is almost the point where if this happened again, you'd be saying, do we race in this? Do we need to cancel it? Because it's, getting to that level. As much as we have, cooling and drinks and everything like that to some degree, it's almost it feels weird that it came up because I mean, we already said it, you get some tracks which are hard, but
like Singapore,
it's just not conceivable to get to that limit, but obviously you can hit it, and so the fact we have, I mean, again, no one went into it going, oh, this is dangerous, and then it happened, we went, that was stupid. It's like everyone couldn't have seen this. Probably good it happened with basically no real impact. A few drivers afterwards quite unwell, but generally everyone making a full recovery within 24 hours. Worst case, someone crashes, someone has a severe reaction or something to it afterwards, and then we're talking a bigger story. So I think we got lucky, nothing more happened. And they'll look into this super deep, understand how they can better tell this kind of condition in the future. And
they're talking about like maybe better airflow into the cabin, or like learning from
they'll be exploring
like
everything.
Desert Rally, where they have these issues with like the super high temperatures as well, trying to learn from that to see how do they deal with it and see if it's something that they can implement into Formula One, which I think is wise, especially if they continue to decide to come to these very hot countries. Which to the chagrin of a lot of people. But I mean, that's only just one part as well, and that's like almost after the race is over that you find out about
that
all
kind
that.
of masked up everything else that happened. It almost threw shade to the fact that there was an absolute chockers full that happened this weekend.
Yep.
We of course had the sprint.
Yes.
I guess we can touch a bit on the sprint, given that happened, and that itself was quite crazy, wild. The sprint, I guess, qualifying is when we started to see this issue with the track limits come in. I guess this was after the main race qualifying, which is where we got that first taste of both the fact drivers were really struggling, and the fact that actually, as much as they've tried to tone down these curbs and such, they also were suspecting there could be a lot of damage done to the cars going on here.
Yes.
I think Pirelli said that they did their deeper analysis as they do of the tires, and they found a few things that were concerning in terms of like how the structure had changed from even just running in qualifying.
After
and
like
then we started to.
I remember seeing photos of like a soft tire on like one basically installation lap, and you're just like, bro, that looks like it's done a fucking race stint. Like, it was bad. But like, that's not even the issue. Like, apparently the tire degradation wasn't necessarily bad. It was just like the tire was basically falling apart. It was like separating.
It was a tire construction. It was a construction issue. Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
So, and that's when we started to hear a little bit afterwards of them saying, hey, actually, unless we can figure something out here, we do have the sprint to see. We may need to impose for, I think, the first time ever, a actual mandatory strategy that you have to do.
I don't recall it ever happening before.
I mean, it harkens back to when we had Indianapolis, which, yes, it was a tire war, but they couldn't find an agreement there. And I know this is different again because we don't have two suppliers or whatever, but I'm glad that almost immediately they said, well, if there's a concern, let's already let everyone know that we say, hey, we're still going to evaluate over Saturday. Fortunately, we have, a qualifying and a short race, which is perfect to evaluate this. But assuming there is an issue, this is what we're going to do, and therefore you should plan for it. So I think the fact that they were on it straight away. As I say, news like this almost caught us by surprise. I think I saw the suggestion. I went, oh, is this just someone suggesting something? But I was like, no, this is, very early on after quali, Pirelli and FIA coming out to saying, we've checked this. We've been up till 2 a.m. doing our work on this because we're worried. Here's what we're going to do. You almost went, oh, well, it's good to see that they're on top of this, they're trying to do what they can to make it work.
Yeah, I think the drivers were saying, or drivers and teams are saying, that they found out exactly the same time as like the media and everyone else found out, because they pushed it out straight away. Because I think, I guess they kind of had to. I think teams were upset that they weren't notified before everyone else, but it's like when you've got that little time, it's just like they're just like, hey, this is a thing, just send it out to everyone. We're not asking for opinions, this is what's happening. So, and I when it's on safety grounds, obviously they're completely,
that was it. I think they could have gone through where they said, hey drivers, this is what we want to do, what do you think? But I think they thought, look, let's just take the politics out of it. It's the same for everyone. Yes, some teams will benefit on this over others, but they obviously were concerned after last year and they didn't want to take any chances, so this was the safest thing to do. And as they say, they did have the privy where we're still going to have the sprint and we're only going to go through if we really think we've got justification here, right? They didn't want to be overly safe. But obviously in the sprint, they saw enough to think, well, we actually need to make those changes there. But before that, we did have the track changes at the start of the Saturday. So because of the wear on the curbs and the track limits, their idea was on a few of those curbs which were most erroneous. It's a tricky track because you've got these corners like Turkey where they're like double or triple or more kind of consecutive corners, right? And often in places like in Turkey or even in Austin where we have similar, the corner's so wide in that you're never going to be kind of on the outside of the curb because it's inefficient to go there. You're more just hitting those inside apexes and whatever, I guess, longer UV you're hitting between those, you've kind of got the track width to decide it. While here, the track wasn't wide enough to go as wide as you wanted, so it meant that as we saw, they were going through like half throttle or gearing down, but they were also then caring less about the apex and more about the outside of the track. So to try and bring it in to both reduce the speeds to make it so they hit those curbs less, they kind of, I think it was 50 centimeters, they brought the curb in. 80 centimeters, and they basically just painted over it to make it look like the curb was there. Which in theory, I guess, did keep the drivers off the edge of that curb.
But they were still running on the curb.
But it also meant that it was very easy to go over it. So from a track limit point of view,
that's
shot up.
Yeah,
it shot up massively. And drivers were still in qualifying for the sprint aware of it, particularly for drivers like the McLaren drivers, which both of them got hit pretty badly by getting laps deleted for the qualifying on Friday.
Yes.
So obviously everyone was trying to dodge it anyway, knowing how painful it could be. But this made it even harder for that Saturday qualifying. And of course, that was in the sun, so it was even trickier. And
the wind was about still, session. So it was easy to go wide because you just get a slapper and you've gone wide, you've lost your lap, and it was it was like I said, the whole weekend was just super super bizarre the way it all panned out, but. Yeah, I mean, but
we did have an exciting.
Well, I was going to say, I'm just touching on those curbs. Like, you look at.
Yeah, go for it.
Even that one curb that they brought in by 80 centimeters, like they have painted over it, and like you say, like obviously they're not running over the very edge of it, which is the worst of it. But because they are still trying to maximize the track width, they're still running over the entirety of that curb.
Yeah.
Because 80 centimeters is not enough. Like, those left tires are still pretty much on the middle of that curb, and they were like, a lot of the track limits you saw was them drifting out all four tires, and that's literally right before turn in. So they're sitting there, the entire curb, all the way along, still trying to get a good entry. I don't know how much that would have helped, which is probably why they introduced the 3-stop mandatory for the race, but. They need to do something different there because that's not going to work. They can't.
It's almost good we had issues to mask the whole track limits debate again, but this was another one where yes, they had the consistent ruling in place, but just listen to Nico Rosberg talk about it. It's his favorite subject to talk about, right? So you can go listen to him on Sky talk about it. But it does show how although it can be consistent, it also can look a bit goofy and silly, and you can have drivers who are getting interviewed and are joking all weekend going, did I actually win? Did I actually finish here? We gotta wait till the stewards rule it, which, as much as they're poking fun, It's because genuinely, yes, you do. Got to wait for to see. Yeah,
Piastri made one.
it meant that we had Oscar and Lando basically.
Yep.
Have I got it right here at the front?
Yeah. They P1, P2. They started.
Yes.
Yeah.
So obviously, we thought they were going to be strong here, but hey, they seem to be really just on it straight away. Max, of course, was on it, but genuinely McLaren were giving them a bit of a fight this weekend. Through all sessions, Max didn't really run away with it, didn't have the flexibility that he usually had. Another weekend is a general theme where, hey, even though he got that title, he didn't actually win that race he got the title in. It was a bit of a funky one with the tires. So going into it, it was a split between soft and medium. There was kind of a few core themes here, which I don't know who it favored. It was a sprint race. We had a lot of safety cars. We had a lot of collisions, a lot of stoppages. And then for some reason in my mind, I thought this would really help the soft runners.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, they're going to be getting, less pushing on their tires. It's going to favor them more. But apparently this stopping and starting actually was really bad for the soft tires. And it
Going
meant that
through
although
all
on
the
safety car
cycles,
restart, those cycles apparently were awful for the tires. And it meant that although on the restarts, people like George were like guns are blazing, within seconds, then they were absolutely nowhere. To the point where George was like, we have to box.
Yeah.
And people were like, what the hell are you talking about? And understandably, Oscar and others, who were kind of swamped at the start were like, have we made the wrong choice here? And then they were like rocket ships at the end.
Yeah.
So, like, if there's no safety cars that happened, I don't know if that would have been completely the opposite, if it would have been the same, if it would have been worse for one or the other.
Yeah.
It was, like, these sprints just seem to be wacky. You think the sprints would be a little calmer than the races as they have been in the past, but we're just getting more and more of these chaotic, wacky sprints, so...
Yeah, the soft, like, immediately when I saw, there was quite a lot of people on the softs, like, it was not quite half and half, but it was, like, almost half and half, and it was, like, probably 8 to 12.
And, like, 4th, 5th, 6th as well, so you kind of had the top 6 all flipped around.
And you thought it was a really good, like you say, a really good idea with George, I think, getting into the lead.
Almost instantly,
tires. Very, very quickly. And it's just like, oh my God, they've got super pace. And then, they just died so quickly. And when they died really, really hard.
Yes, it was nothing.
But I immediately I was like, I think the soft's the wrong choice. I think just given all the tire talk that's been here, and seeing the tires after like 1 or 2 laps on those softs, I'm like, they're not making like 19 laps on those softs. I just can't see it happening. And I was right. They didn't. Well, they did, but they lost a lot of positions because of it. But I mean, obviously we saw Piastri get his first win. He's actually beaten Norris to his first win.
Norris
in F1,
to getting a win, yes. And they do call it a win because they've changed it where this isn't a qualifying anymore. They do change it to actually be a mini win. So on the records, it's nice to know they've given it to him. And
is it though?
Yeah, I think yes. In a minor sense, yes. You do with a caveat, but it still felt like a proper win, in those conditions with half the grid almost retiring in the bloody sprint, the stopping and the starting and some close battles. With Max chasing him down, he found something there, I think an overall theme, as we've had previously, is that Norris probably seemed better overall, but again, Piastri kind of starting ahead of him made that difference. It was almost similar to Singapore when Russell starting ahead of Hamilton. Kind of,
Well, it also helped that I think both Max and Lando dropped back right at the start. They actually got they dropped back. I think it's the soft runners that actually got a really good start ahead of them.
And Max had a pretty woeful start.
I think they dropped back to like P5, P6, both of them.
Yes.
Like they had awful starts, and Piastri was like, thank you very much, and stayed in P1 at least for the time being. And I think that, sorry, go on.
Go on. No, you go.
Okay, I was just gonna say with Max, I think he was very, very close to Piastri by the end of it as well. So I think had Max not dropped back at the start, he probably wouldn't be celebrating his first win. But kudos to him for having a good start and staying out in front and, keeping his nose clean in the battle with Russell as well. And, fighting back when he had the pace over him as well. So, I think it's probably one of the better rookie seasons for someone in F1. Like we'll
have plenty of time to review it, but every weekend we say the same. When you look back, at the pairing that they had, and now you look now and that whole contract saga, you go, he and his manager Weber, you couldn't have lined this up more perfect. As much as the doubters at the start of the year were saying, they absolutely nailed it, and he's showing why McLaren put their faith in him.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, and you can even see there's a few things he still needs to learn as a rookie. Like on all the restarts, he kind of either didn't do well to get the jump or got, lost a bit, but he made up from that. He didn't let it get to him, and even afterwards, as we've seen in the past few races, he's always said he's going to, even with a good result, he's going to look at his race, he's going to analyze it, chat about it. So that's a good thing for him to go through. He's got some, experience starting in the front of restarts, and that's something he's, of course, going to go back. And next time we see him do a restart, he's probably going to do it, as good as an experienced driver, knowing him and how good he is at learning.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
It was good to see.
Yeah.
But I guess that kind of led into also performance from him and plenty of... I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on the sprint. I mean, as we saw, there was kind of some clumsy incidents out there.
Yeah.
We unfortunately saw Lawson right at the start just get things wrong.
Yep.
I'm surprised this hasn't really happened yet for him. I'd say with that track being so dusty and tricky, and
he was offline,
it just seems he took
a
bit too much speed. But if you're going to have an accident, this is probably like the least, the least... He didn't hit anyone. He didn't do something dumb, right? I think this was pretty unlucky.
Pretty innocuous,
Yeah, so it's hard to give him too much of a slap on the wrist for it.
I say he's the worst driver now, actually. He doesn't deserve the seat anymore.
Well, he finished behind Sargent and Perez, so he's like garbage, obviously, even though he's only 1 and 2 places behind him. But let's not...
Well, we talk about, Sargent as well. He also did a similar thing where he went off all on his own in that sprint
a bit later
race.
on, but yes, he had another... Oops.
Yeah, the difference is that this is becoming a little bit of a habit for Sargent, whereas this is Lawson's sort of first foray into this. But
quite a little slip. And then we had the big kind of three-way crunch, which I'm surprised we haven't had more of these, but it was a classic case of kind of two drivers on the outside not knowing they're on the outside, the driver in the middle seeing them both going, uh-oh, but not having time to pull out, and then 3 into 1 goes kablooey, and then this is what you get. So, again, the fact that I guess this track showed you could even go for things like that, we almost had like a 4 wide into T1. I think was credit to the racing you could have here, but yeah, I feel like maybe with the sprint being so chaotic, maybe a few drivers that weren't driving Mercedes tried to take it a little more easy in the main race.
True. Well, let's touch on that then. I guess now that you've brought it up, let's go to that main race.
Yes.
I'll start before we get on to that T1 incident. We did have Sainz didn't start the race at all. He had a suspected fuel leak that they couldn't fix by the race start, so he didn't go out at all. To very quickly touch on Ferrari as well, Leclerc got a P5. He said it was the best he could do. I kind of agree. They seem to be kind of a step behind both McLaren's and Mercedes in terms of pace.
I didn't even remember really seeing him.
He was
kind of doing his own thing.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, P5 he was right. It's the best he could do. In terms of their pace, they were not as strong as McLaren and Mercedes and Max, of course. But
not the Bulls.
No, Max. It's becoming Max, not Red Bull now, very much so.
Yes.
But we'll talk about the Turn 1 incident because it's something I predicted, I think, for last season, and it's the two Mercedes come together.
It finally
Let's
happened. Go back. Yeah. You've got your point. Finally, rewrite the results.
I meant to say 2023, but it's a shame. But this was Hamilton got a brilliant start coming up alongside George. And
because he started on the soft, right? Well, most of the started on the medium. Or was it he started medium and on the hard?
I thought Russell started on the soft.
I think Hamilton had the better tyre because that's why they were saying
I'm thinking
Russell
of the sprint.
Maybe should have been aware that Hamilton was going to have a really good start because in the sprint, those drivers on the better tyre had such a good start.
No, I'm thinking of the sprint. I think Russell started on the soft and Hamilton, whatever. God, just have one race, please. But yeah, he got a very, very good launch alongside George right at the start. And yeah, just sort of turned in a little bit too much and kind of took himself out. I can't really see any fault of George there as much as people try to put it on him.
Yes.
I think if anything racing incident, it's just a T1 sort of 3 and
It's 100% a racing incident. The only two caveats is one, Hamilton could have left more room if, like, you could say you could leave more room for the sake of it, but you're always going to leave as little room as you need. You're judging it as best you can. And how he judged it, if you look at his arc in the corner, there's never a time when he like turns in extra or he shortens that. He's kind of doing consistent arc. It's just that there's Russell who's also got a car right near him, so he can't exactly jive around either. He's kind of set. So it's unlikely that they hit each other. And yes, the other argument is, look, had George maybe known in his head going, this, you know, the strategy is either I get ahead, or if Hamilton has a good launch, I let him go. Now, I doubt that's what he was thinking of. There was a scenario where maybe he was, and then maybe he sees him and he pulls back a bit because he's like, go, son, go. You've got a hell of a launch, right? But obviously he wasn't thinking about that. He was focusing on the car. He was right behind and around in front of him, not the guy suddenly having a line down the left. And unfortunately, a rather innocuous bump meant actually dire consequences, particularly for Hamilton. The fact that George had a pirouette and managed to come back how he did. The biggest shame, I think, is we probably got robbed of an even better race. Like, both of those Mercedes versus both of those McLarens, that could have been mind-blowing as much as we enjoyed it. I'm like, damn, that could have been amazing. Imagine if Hamilton had that amazing start, challenge for the lead. Who knows? Let's go back. Let's do it again.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the points I had is, like, when you look at, particularly looking at Russell, his pace coming through the field, because he was right at the back. He pitted at the end of that lap because he thought he had damage. So he came in, put on another set of... he went the 4-stop instead of the 3-stop.
I was going to say the legendary 4-stop.
Yeah. And yeah, the pace that he had, except for that final stint on those soft tires, that seemed to be the wrong plan.
Something went wrong
I
there,
thought he was going to absolutely charge back through, and he immediately, from the first lap he came out, was dropping back from the McLarens, and I'm like...
It was bizarre,
But regardless...
I didn't look at that, but that was
I
obviously an outlier.
I was very much paying attention to it. Every lap, I'm like, no, it's all right. It's going to come to him. It's going to come to him as he's dropping back 2-3 seconds a lap. I'm like, he's coming.
You go, what the hell?
He's coming. It's fine. It's going to come to him. It didn't come to him. But yeah, he had exceptional pace coming through the field. Made a lot of really, really good moves. As you say, a lot of them not with DRS down the straight. A lot of them were into that T5, I think it was.
Yeah, that kind of complex.
Yeah, so he had, to be able to do it on not the straight, on the other part of the track, other parts of the track, he obviously had a significant pace advantage to those around him. So, and when you think about, for the majority of this season, or at least recent races, Hamilton's had the better race pace to Russell. You think, were they faster than McLaren?
Yeah.
Like,
I think on race pace they could have been. I think over one lap, no, but over race pace, it seemed obviously with George pushing.
Wow, no swearing on this channel.
Yeah, George a fucking pussy. And with Hamilton known to be quite a good tire whisperer as well.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? Maybe, but it's still, I guess, look, they even said coming out of it, we can take signs here that actually we had really strong pace in a really difficult environment.
Yep.
So they can take a positive from it. Hamilton, of course, decided to, when he got taken out, just decide to F the rules as well and decided to walk across a live track.
Yep.
Got slapped with a big old fine and talking to from the stewards. Yep. Obviously, he wasn't really thinking, or he just didn't give a toss. Ironic that there's the shot of him just getting over the track when his teammate's coming out of the pits. So it makes it look even worse that nearly his teammate was the one that he was in danger of. So obviously a lapse of judgment.
I think he came out pretty immediately, and he's just like, that was probably not the smartest thing to do. So
yes, and understandably in the car, again, in the moment, he was saying, "I think I got hit."
By my own teammate.
I hit him. Yeah. And then very quickly, almost a few minutes after, they were both going, "No, I think that might have been me." And then it was only when George realized, actually, I think I was all right. And Hamilton went, "Oh no, okay. If anyone's gonna put the blame on, I should have left more room there." So,
well, I think a lot of people aren't they take the heat of the moment comments. I mean, I used to be like this as well.
Yeah.
They take the heat of the moment comments, and they're not allowed to change from that. Like, if they try and deviate from that, like try and have a better opinion from, having cooled down a bit or actually having watched footage. No, they're not allowed to do that. What you said in the moment is what everyone cares about. But he, even before he saw, like, he had the interview that they had on the broadcast, and he said, they asked him, had you seen the footage? And he's like, no, I haven't seen it. And still he's like, maybe it was my fault. Like,
yes,
he was
already open-minded to it.
Exactly,
He'd already cooled off without even seeing it.
Yeah,
He wasn't like, oh, reserve judgment. He was already saying, look, if it was, but
people won't talk about that. But that's something I notice. I'm just like, it takes a big person to do that without even seeing, like, particularly knowing how much pace that car had. Them both starting up quite high and having decent pace in the sprint race as well. He probably thought he could do something pretty damn well, to without even seeing it, thinking he got taken out by his own teammate, to be like, hey, actually, wait a second, maybe I should think about this a bit more. And then to say that only a few minutes later, I don't think that gets talked about enough. But yeah, I just wanted to point it out. So
yeah, and look, he did that off track. Even George was obviously very upset in the car.
Yes,
he was even afterwards. He was saying, "Oh, like, this is so annoying. Maybe I should have given him room, whatever." And even Toto wired in to say, "Look, it's okay." And obviously, from there, he then told himself, "Right, that's in the past. We can still have a good result here, even though we're from the back, even though etc." And it went to show that he gunned it through for a fourth, which is a very considerably good pace and position, and as we say, a race that was so tough. So he couldn't have done that if he was still thinking about lap one and what could have been.
True.
He obviously raised it in and went, right, whatever it is, let's look at it later. Maybe some other drivers like Stroll can maybe take notice and learn a few things rather than deciding action in the heat of the moment. That's going to be my attitude for the rest of the day. If those haters want to hate on Stroll, go for it, because he's the right guy to poke at for that. And these other guys you should look at that are actually, doing the right thing and showing that, hey, in the heat of the moment, you can step out of it. And
yeah. Well, that's a great segue. Let's talk. Let's talk about Stroll. He had,
on the travesty of Stroll,
mate. He's had some bad weekends. This probably ranks as one of his worst, you'd have to say. Both in a racing sense and in a public image sense.
And at a track where that car actually didn't seem that bad. Yes, the Alonso didn't do too well. I think he might have gone off or done something during the race.
Yeah, we can talk about that in a sec. Yeah.
The overall pace of that car was probably the best it's been this half of the year, I think. It did have potential if you could lock it in.
Yep. Had good one-lap pace as well.
Yes. And that's so we just saw a catastrophic gap between the drivers over both qualifying sessions. It wasn't even the first one. The second one was just as bad. It was like...
He was... I got the time, like, after the qualifying session where he shoved his trainer. He got knocked out. Obviously, he got knocked out in Q1 in both qualifyings, where Alonso made Q3 again.
Yes.
In that first qualifying session, he was 1.1 seconds behind Alonso. 1.1 seconds. Yes. That's unbelievable.
This isn't the day where that only costs you one or two places. That is almost the entire grid by Max at this point.
Yep. It does feel like that, yeah.
That's second to 20th.
Yep. So it was like, I look, I get it. He's frustrated. It's, the heat probably doesn't help. When it's hot, you tend to let your temper run wild, particularly if you have a bit of a temper. You tend to be a bit more rash and lash out. But when you're shoving members of your team like that, that was a proper shove. When you're coming out to the media, like, even after cooling down and giving basically 1-2 word answers and just basically looking like you might kill the next person who looks at you funny, like...
and it's not even like he got, like, held up, or that he thought the track limits are crap, or that the team stuffed him over. It was just himself he was angry at. And fair enough, but then, like, maybe you'd be more, like, disappointed. Like, it almost seemed like, I don't know. Yeah. It was not a reaction any of us expected. And then it seemed to just affect him. And then, we didn't... I mean, he made the end of the main race, so...
Yeah.
Good job, but Yeah,
he also should have gotten points, but he obviously had track limits a few times and finished P11. So didn't get points.
We'll probably touch on that near the end of it. That whole thing, which was again overshadowed by everything else going on, and a few lucky drivers scored some well-deserved points from that. But we'll get on to that later. But
I guess we'll talk about unless you want to talk about Stroll. I was just here to talk about Alonso, how he actually had decent pace.
No, I was just gonna say in general, like I think it's the same as the Sargent and the Perez, where you go, look, teams are giving some grace. They're saying obviously we'll do some sort of mid 2024 review, but all three of them just are giving you so many reasons to say actually this just looks stupid doing this. I mean, one item which I did have aside, if I can find it, was to do with let me see if I've got it here. Give me a second. It was to do with Aston Martin's advantage over McLaren since Austria.
Yeah,
and how
I meant to save that. Yeah.
How massive that has come down.
Yep.
So in Austria, the gap was 146 points, which is quite a lot of points.
Yep.
4 races later, it was 93. It actually went back up to 104 5 races ago in the Netherlands. Only dropped down to 102 in Italy. And then it dropped to 78 in Singapore, 49 in Japan, and now it's just 11 after Qatar.
Oh my god.
That climb is not only because both McLaren drivers are so with it, but with only having one Aston partially scoring and having only that one Aston partially scoring for the start of the year, there's no chance. Like they're just gonna slam through it. You know what I mean? Like it's 100%. He is the reason that they have been costed that fourth place in the standings.
Yep.
There's no excuse for it, almost. Yep. So not only does this shine even more a light that's saying, hey, if McLaren had a Ricciardo in that seat still, then maybe it would actually be a lot closer. But no, it looks like McLaren have just got it right. And as we predicted, Aston are going to be punished for not having a competent driver in that second seat. Yep. Will this then be where they need to say, look, bigger picture here, we're just throwing away 1-2 constructors' places, for having him. Like, what more do you need,
cut back to the last year, like a year ago, when I think we made those exact comments, was like, when is Stroll being shit gonna cost them a place in the championship, and is this the time to get rid of him?
This is it.
God,
this
we're good
race
at this.
Just...
We're so good at this. It's pretty much like unforgivable at this point. I just don't see how he can get a seat again. I just don't. I mean, we'll talk again. Post-season review, I think we'll
this
have
is post-season, but this weekend in particular,
kind of has to. It feels like it has to be nail in the coffin stuff. Like
yes, it's similar to. I mean, we won't touch him long, but even Checker like this weekend was nothing strong at all. Like you could go, oh, he got taken in an accident that wasn't his fault. What the fuck was he doing there? He should be in P2 or P3. Why is he fighting three-way with a fucking Haas and an Alpine? Get out of there! Like he's got no one to blame but himself. Like he could be mad and go, oh, it's like.
Bro.
Why are you there every weekend?
Yeah.
So, same conversation. I think Red Bull I don't know about the Sargent thing, 'cause it's different. It's the other end of the spectrum, right? But yeah, this Red Bull thing, as much as, again, people are saying, oh, give him time. It's like, no. Like, everything coming out, I think you alluded to earlier from Marco, from everyone is saying, actually, you need to sort this shit out, because if this doesn't improve the next few races, we can't go into next year with this. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I know that. I've seen.
There's still comments coming out today. They're still talking about it, going.
Yeah, it's bad. Like even when Christian Horner, like he's probably been his biggest defender, particularly when talking to the media. He's always very diplomatic,
bigger
about
picture,
it.
And diplomatic. Yes.
You could tell from the comments, even pre the feature race, where he's just like, like in his own sort of diplomatic way, he's like, this shit has to end. Like, he needs to do better.
It's changed from the conversation of going, he'll get back into it.
Exactly.
He needs to get back into it.
He's got like the rest of this season to get back into it. Or we've got, and they again, when you have someone like Lawson, I think. It's incredibly timely for Lawson. I don't think Lawson realizes how important those races were for him, that he had to be able to prove his worth. because I think it could very well have landed him a seat at AlphaTauri for next year. So even when he was told otherwise, I think it will eventuate that way if this Perez thing keeps going the way it is. But to move back to Aston Martin, we'll talk about Alonso just a little bit. I kind of just want to talk about the mainly the feature race, but yeah, like we were saying, he had actually decent pace, not amazing pace, not like start of the year Aston pace, but he was right up there with the the drivers you expect to be up there. But and in the race, I think he was actually running as high as like P4 or P5 maybe. He ended up
dicing with them,
he ended up dropping,
especially when Russell hadn't made his way all the way through the field.
It must have been P4 then, because I think he lost 2 positions to that error by going off the track.
Yeah.
Because he lost it to Russell and then Leclerc in the end. Speaking of Leclerc, he dives back onto the track directly in front of Leclerc. How do you see that return to the track?
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was
I think he was lucky in where the other cars were. There could have been a situation where that would have been a lot closer if cars were in a different position, if cars were fighting down there. I guess obviously in the moment no one's really gone off there, so maybe he just suddenly jumped on and went, oh, I should have come on a lot slower, a lot sharper.
Yeah.
I didn't see much chatter about it. Again, it was overshadowed by everything else, but I think it was maybe, in the moment he went a bit, oh, crap, I haven't done that very well, but he got fortunate that there wasn't actually, anyone too close to him. It just made it
I think
semi-close call.
It probably helps that Leclerc ended up getting past anyway. Like, if he ended up staying ahead because of that, I think there's a good chance.
Or if Leclerc had to take any sort of evasive action, but staying on the line to the left, he did swing by him. That was fairly close, but still nothing where Leclerc had to do anything different. I don't think he lifted all. Like he might have slightly lifted just in case, because of course you see an accident. As much as the drivers want to be quick, they also don't want to smash into another car. So he may have hesitated, jinked a little bit, but as far as it looked, he was still going through their full bore. So no impact, no repercussion. But probably a poor mistake from Alonso, but
it feels like he's making these uncharacteristic mistakes more recently.
I don't know if it's like frustration. I don't know if it's just because that car is really tricky to drive on the edge. It was similar. We saw it near the end in Singapore. Again, it seems to be near the end of these races where he slips. It could just be because he's over driving, because he's really trying to get something. I don't know if we heard, I think he came out of the race in Singapore or somewhere else where he seemed very frustrated to say, no, look, this is the first time this year where this has really felt quite bad. I don't think that was the case here, so I think it might have just been in the heat in the moment in pushing for something.
Singapore is a bit of a misnomer as well. Every driver had trouble. Like when you have Red Bull having troubles with driving their car, then it's just true. That's just kind of that's its own thing. But I think it's good to see that Alonso at least still does have a little bit of pace in that Aston, but I'm starting to see just a few little cracks there, but they obviously, I don't think
the true cause is unknown, right? It could be carelessness, it could be that frustration, over pushing, whatever. But
again, with the heat and the with the
everything,
the
tires slippery, everything, slippery surface. You go slightly off the line, you're all over the place.
That's it. Yeah, it's like I don't think we could judge it too harshly, but but let's oh god, where do we go next? Where do you want to go next? What have we not talked about? I got a few
small things I want to mention.
Go.
I believe we had the official world's fastest pit stop from McLaren.
Yeah, we did. 1.8 seconds.
1.8. Bloody well done. That was cool for them to have as well.
Considering the temperatures and the
stress, the pressure and everything. To get it that right.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. I saw it pop up on a few non-F1 places, which was cool to see people going, wow, this is so cool to see,
Yep. Remember that they changed to those tires to slow pit stops down as well, like those styles.
They're supposed to be heavier tires as well. But,
Yep.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Alpha getting lucky, they normally have their clean races, but seem to just miss out on the points on AlphaTauri. But hey, they lucked out here on some penalties.
Double points finish, baby.
There you go. Very
First
nice.
one of the
season.
And I
believe they move up a place in constructors to P8 if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that
which
probably would.
Quite huge.
Yeah.
They move ahead of I believe it should be Haas. So
Would be, yeah.
again, I think we talked about it. I don't know if it was our mid-season preview after Singapore or something. I think it was maybe on our talk about Sargent in saying that any of those teams could still have a stonker, have a weekend where there's a lot of retirements, and they could fight for that 7th still, which difference between 7th versus 8th or 9th is still massive to those teams, the amount of revenue they can get. So, pretty well from both those drivers. I don't know if it was the main qualifying or the sprint where Bottas managed to reach Q3, which I was ecstatic about when
it was
he did
good.
that.
Yeah, he made it in main qualifying by the looks of it,
because he got P9 because Lando's
that's right. Yeah, he had his
validated,
lap
so
deleted.
he actually got P9.
Yep.
So and that was a qualifying where again people like Sainz and Perez and that didn't make it. He started P9, just ran a safe race and obviously a very difficult race. I don't know if it was him or Zhao that might have even force-stopped, because some of those are in some of the clashes. Lap 1 in the safety car chose to change early, which kind of changed into a force-stop strategy.
One of them force-stopped,
anyway.
Yeah. I think it might have been Bottas. I think Bottas was a force-stop.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I've actually got it here. It was Russell, because he had to come in for check that damage. Bottas, Magnussen, Stroll, Lawson. And Bottas is really the only one out of those drivers that really made it work. So, and Russell, obviously Russell, but I think that car just had pace. But out of the
yes,
out of the drivers
out of
that
those
chose
are more
to,
in the mid pack, right?
Yeah,
it can matter a lot more.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to say credit to them, and I still think that it's overshadowed by the other bigger fight, and the fight for 4th, the fight for 2nd, the constructors. But that fight for 7th is still, again, one good performance could shoot someone to the top there. So that's still going to be an exciting little run to the end.
Definitely, yeah.
I don't think I had anything else minor to mention.
That's right.
I don't know if you got anything before the big old
the last
slap bang penalty discussion.
Yeah, well, the last couple I want to talk about. I already sort of pointed it out, but Ocon getting a P7 in the feature race, despite spending half of it with sick in his helmet.
Well, they've settled into their normal best of the rest position.
They kind of have, behind
4 other teams. Occasionally dicing up with Aston, but on a weekend where Aston's on it, they still obviously got a bit of a jump, but they're also getting ahead of the likes of the Alpha, of the Haas of that group too. So they're kind of in that middle spot, despite the fact that, not that long ago with all the drama going on, it's because they should be at the front of that other spot. So at least they're finishing, at least they're getting some points on the table, but they're not really moving from the position they're in, the constructors, are they?
It's just kind of, they just get to sit there for the rest of the season, and so be it. That's just where they live now. But Gasly, I think, just ended up out of the points. He had a couple of track limits violations. Again, we'll go on to that. But I think he ended up P12 in the end. But,
12 it looks like here,
But I think Haas, again, Hulkenberg in particular actually looked pretty strong this weekend. I believe he made a Q3 in one of them. I don't remember if it was SQ.
Did he I'm trying to remember if it was the sprint or the main race. He was running quite high, but then he got unlucky and fell back.
God, I don't remember. I just know that he obviously he had the 10-second penalty in the main race for starting in the wrong position, because obviously Sainz didn't start and he parked in Sainz's spot, and then he got taken out by Ocon in the
that
Ocon
was
Perez.
it. So yes, he parked in the wrong spot, and that was really bad because he got like a 5 or 10-second stop go penalty, and he was actually fighting for those lower points pretty consistently through that first stint. He kind of was having good pace and he was happy with it, but then they had that long pit stop, and then he was near the back and he just couldn't recover. I just googled it, and I know afterwards he was saying he felt awful because he actually felt really good in the car and thought they could have done something there. But lapse of judgment, this happens, I feel like, once a year to someone, where they just do it and they go, oh no, and then sometimes it cannot matter. Here you'd say it probably mattered a lot.
Possibly missed out on some points. Again,
I'd
important
say
in
quite
the
likely with how things played out
in the Haas Alfa Romeo battle.
Well, exactly. It 100% mattered. They were the ones that dropped back, I think.
That's
so
it. So
this is what I mean. Those you got to be on top of the game at every little opportunity to it could mean big monies or little monies.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's seeing as you've been alluding to the big bad track limit talk. Why don't you start us off? Where do you want to start talking about this big boy again?
Yeah, so I mean, as I say, we didn't really know where it was going to go once we got to the race, right? So we've had circuits like in Austria and others where we get a lot of track limits or at least pop-up string practice, and you go, well, it's just drivers testing limits, etc. We sometimes see it places like Spain, but then during qualifying and race they calm down as they learn the limits, right? That's what practice is there for. We want to see the drivers pushing the limits. Then in qualifying, when you start to see a few track limits pop up, again, a few isn't uncommon, but when it's almost every driver every session getting one, you start going, oh, this is obviously quite hard to maintain. And then the question is for the race, is this going to be one where within 5 laps someone's already getting a black and white flag? And then you go, well, are we going to have another repeat where half the bloody grid gets penalties? It didn't get that bad. It still got bad enough where several drivers definitely got slapped with it, which we can go through. I know you've got it. I've got it up as well. And it did matter for penalties where, because it was so close, I remember when the drivers crossed the line and then, they were coming up in order and then the whole thing was flipping around. Live time it was going, oh, he's there. So, yes, again, a few that, I think we had this theme last time when there was a lot of track penalties, a few drivers that maybe didn't finish as high, but just kept everything clean, I'd say lucked out, but I don't think it's luck that they got it. The drivers obviously in a very tricky situation kept it on the track and kind of cashed in on that, and got some nice rewards for it. But have you got the actual counts and penalties in front of you?
Don't. I saw a picture of it, and I didn't save it, but I actually did. There was.
Well, I'll do a few things. So I know the worst offenders were Gasly and Perez, who were by far the worst offenders.
I think Gasly had one more track limit than Perez, but I think...
Yes, he had 7, Perez had 6.
Yeah, that's right.
Stroll and Albon had 5, and then a bunch of them had 3, handful with 2, and then a bunch of them with 1. So I think there were 4 drivers from that actually got the time penalties.
I think I read that Max was the only driver not to go over track limits a single time that race.
There could be maybe a few here that did one that just weren't noted, but yes, Max looks like was the only one that didn't even have a question mark around him. Which, hey, credit to him.
Fair play.
We said this time and time in a weekend where he could have tossed something away.
Yep.
We only finished a few seconds up the road, and but he still did it, right?
Yeah,
so, there you go. But so I think Perez and Gasly both got 15 seconds worth of penalties either throughout or by the end of the race. Basically, I remember Perez during his second offense was being told by the radio, "This is hurting our race. Stop it. This actually matters." Hence, we don't need to go into it more on the piling it on Perez corner, but the fact is, team were not just like, "Oh, it's just a bad weekend. Try your best." They're just like, "Stop it,
bro. Stop it now.
You keep boxing. We gotta wait, and then you gotta overtake all those bloody cars again."
Well, I did the very, very basic math. This is something I found out right before the race, which I wanted to talk about in relation to that. I'm glad we came back to that. Perez only scored 1 point to Max's 33 this weekend. In the last 3 rounds, Perez has scored 5 points. 5 points. 5 in the Red Bull. I can't.
Superstar.
I
and
can't.
It is favorite circuits, right? City circuits and.
I just don't know how anyone can defend him anymore. I just don't get it, and his team aren't even defending him anymore. Anyway, that's whatever. It's fine. He's going to be gone by next year anyway.
Bad.
So
So yes, he also totaled the tallies for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
And Stroll and Albon also got 10-second penalties too. It does say. In this report I'm looking at, actually, that Alonso was investigated, but they saw that it was just fair enough. So I don't know if that costs... I don't know if it necessarily cost Albon points with how it would have worked out. He might have just been behind Perez by around a second. He would have just been 11th if he didn't cut anything. So, but again, that's a weekend where it could have cost Albon a point, and that might have been a talking point, right? He was basically a second off getting a point if he hadn't had those track limits, assuming that the track limits didn't save him more time than that. But that's that's hearsay, right? You're not going to go that line. But
I know that. Yeah, Perez obviously finished P10. he ended up, I think, P9 at the standings, and then got that 5-second. Obviously, they found out he
That's
did
correct.
it again and got another one, and he dropped back to P10, which boosted Zhou to P9.
Well, it might have been. I think he was P8 because Bottas was looks like 14 seconds behind him.
Yeah.
No,
So
yeah.
if it was 14,
No, Bottas wasn't. Perez ended 14 seconds behind Bottas, so he would have finished 1 second ahead of him.
right? Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah,
That's what I meant.
Yes. I know. Yeah, obviously they had the Stroll and Gasly penalties. Those were post race.
Points.
Yes, yeah, that's what actually boosted both Perez and not Perez, fucking Bottas and Zhou, I think, into the points. I think it was. So, and it was like you say, it was all over the place. It was so hard to keep track of, and this is part of the reason why Austria was so confusing as well. Is trying to keep track of all this, and this wasn't even as hard as Austria. It's just like, how do you...
Well, it's a good thing it didn't matter for the leaders. If it just happened for those final points, then yeah, this would have been completely different if it was...
Well, again, you become the laugh. Like I alluded to it right at the start, but when you have when you're having an interview with the third place for the qualifying, and then literally as they're talking, as Naomi Schiff is talking to him, it pops up on the screen, Piastri lap time deleted. It's like, oh, we're just getting word, like halfway through their conversation, we're just getting word that your lap time's being deleted, which means that'll put you 6th. And he's just sitting there like, yep, that's cool. Yep,
at least he took it like
awesome.
a champ. Some drivers could have been a bit awkward about it, but you'd say he handled it pretty well. And he still posed with the photos and had fun with it. He's like, I'm up here. Do I have to leave? No, brilliant.
Yeah, at least Norris was like sort of hanging around. He's like, he pretty much knew he lost that lap, so he's like waiting to get bopped. And then Piastri was there, and he's just like, hey, cool, I got to P3, but it's just like halfway through talking to him, it's like, oh, actually, no, you're P6. He's like, why are we here? Like,
why are we here?
It's just becoming a bit. It's just a bit silly, isn't it? It's just a bit silly. And I think even the FAA boss, the what's his name, the big head honcho dude, he's even come out and said, hey, look, these tracks need to find a way to do this better, because I think he's more or less threatened to, like, hey, we won't come back here if this is going to continue to be an issue in years to come. So there's a few different ways you could go, right? You can either go down the side of like improving the tech to where it can almost be guaranteed within seconds when it happens, so you don't have this lead time afterwards, right? That's one way. You can go on the other side where you go back to a model where you're saying, well, is there only a track limit if they gain time, and that kind of thinking. There's some corners where you just say, let's not worry about it, because logically it just doesn't make sense to you, right? All these self-policing curves. We talked about this when we went to Catalonia in Spain. Yeah. How there's that one curve where if you're absolutely in the millimeter off the edge, you can get a time penalty. But it's dumb, because if you're out there anyway, well, then you're a god, and who knows how you got that close to the edge. Because any sooner, and you're in the gravel, right? Yeah. So then you say, well, do you just make every curb like that? So if you do hit the point where you're getting a track limit, you're actually getting a dirt in the tire, running it so close that you're not going to be aiming for it every lap. Yeah. I feel like that's what the most common answer is, where they talk about having like gravel or, abrasive surface or something. So if you are on that edge, you're playing such a risky game, you don't want to go for it anyway. Or you do because you're a world champion going for the best lap ever, and then it's all risk reward, which is even better, for that kind of thing. Yeah. So there's a few ways you can go with it. I still, again, when we talk about the end of 2021 and we say just stick to the rules as is, again, that's why, as much as you did need to sort this out, it could be a lot worse. It could be where, half the corners are cuttable and half fun. It just looks like even more of a farce, right? Where you go, why are you enforcing that when this isn't enforced? And you go down that whole terrible line. Yeah. But, that's what they did. Was it 21 or even last? I don't know. It was one of the recent years where there was just like, there was certain tracks where they noticed in practice where, a certain corner drivers were going
change
off.
It, like after every session.
Yeah, every session they'd be like, this corner we're checking track limits. They don't care about the others, so they just abuse all the other corners for track limits. But they wouldn't abuse it for this one. But they wouldn't get pinged for it, because it's like, we're only checking track limits for this corner. It's like, that's where it becomes a bit farcical. So I'm kind of...
And it did actually matter here. I think it was Ocon who got slapped by it in terms of overtaking off the track, and sometimes track limits can come into that, where if you have a vague track limit, you're not sure if a car overtakes off track if they actually are off track. We had this, I think it was back in 2021 with Max and Lewis, and
There
how
was
Max
Bahrain.
overtook off track in Bahrain, even though
Yeah.
it's technically a line by yourself you
remember
could take. So this does avoid that, and as I say, we saw some obvious incidents with the Alpine where he overtook just completely off track, and you just knew you didn't need to go, oh, but sometimes they're allowed to go out there on a lap, you know, so...
Was it Ocon? I think it might have been Gasly, because I remember he had to give the place back.
Okay,
It was Gasly
yeah.
and Stroll.
He did it twice, because
Okay.
one of the times he had to let through was when they had Perez coming through, and he kind of took advantage
That's
of it.
right. Yeah, that was Gasly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I remember.
but yeah. So even though you could say, look, it's better to keep it simple, then the other flip side is this is probably like one of the most, you know, rich, well-run sports in the world with absolute talent at the top who can figure this out, right? There should just be enough people there that want to get this right that they can sort it out. This isn't some Saturday league run at your local Bristol club circuit, whatever, where they're talking about this, right? This is the FIA, the FOM, with billions of dollars in resource, with a massive global company. You know, they can get a team together to work out something that's going to bloody work. Like, they can design intricate engine regs and air and all that, and they can't figure out to go, no, we're just going to have a flat rule where it's the line and it's it.
Yeah.
So you come on, you can do better than that.
Try a bit harder, please. For the love of the sport.
You've done some amazing things, yet this is just the one thing you can't get right.
Yep. You're so close. So close.
I know. It's so close.
Yeah, I'm not upset. I'm just disappointed. It's the
yeah. I can give it a free pass because I understand it, but I understand why from a general spectator's point of view, yes, it can look a bit silly, and you can cheer for your driver thinking they got a good position and they don't. You're like, well, that doesn't look wrong. Why is it wrong?
Yep.
And then, so that's what it's really for. It's for the general audience, right?
Yeah.
An enjoyable, marketable product that you just look at it and go, that made sense. I get it. That was amazing.
Yep. Yeah, and I couldn't have said it better myself. But I think we've covered everything. Like I said, there was a lot to cover. It was just like a really weird, strange, bizarre weekend. But I really hope that something changes for next year. I think that's mine and most people's hopes and wishes. But
I guess, yes, we could very briefly start to look ahead, which is for Circuit of the Americas, the second of 3 races in the US.
Yes.
Which should be exciting, and another sprint, which after last weekend, bring it on, I guess.
And I think this track will be good
the amount
for
of battles
sprint.
happening out there. Yeah, it will. It should be an absolute bazinga, but we'll have to we'll debrief it when we get there. We're going to take a few days to rest, recoup, cool down.
Wonder what the fuck happened this weekend, and
exactly.
and then
Still,
proceed
we'll
to
add in
immediately
probably
forget
our,
it.
Yeah, check the Patreon for the 3-hour unedited version of this one, because we're only getting started. This is just
God.
for the public, folks.
So much. I can't believe we're recording for an hour. Please edit this down.
I can believe it. I'm surprised it hasn't been longer. But
hour 10 even. Goodness me. Thanks to everyone who stuck along this far into the recording. Stay tuned for Circuit of the Americas. We've got a big triple header coming up. It's a triple header of some tracks that we all love, all know and love. So let's get ready for that. Let us know how you saw the Qatar Grand Prix. I'm sure there's a lot of different views you could take from this. I'm actually really interested to hear people's thoughts about this. It's been crazy reading about it as well. But let us know. Coming back to the last few races of the season, I'm excited to see how all these storylines wrap up. But thanks everyone for watching or listening, and we'll see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Ciao.